We are live streaming at this moment, something that we don't normally do, but I am excited to do this for all of the people who are going to really be empowered by this conversation. I am welcoming Jordan Rubin to this live stream. Welcome, Mr. Rubin.
Good to be here, Ed. Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about three things. And the thing I want to talk about over this next 35, 40 minutes is part of what's very vital for me to help understand health and also empower more people. You have a story to tell from the time you were 19 years old that's always been incredible to me, because you are in the depths of some of the poorest health that a person can be in and still be walking and breathing. Love to hear how you recovered using Mother Nature, wisdom, the green pharmacy, all the things that I have lived my life for to support the intuitive healing that we all have. We just don't know how to access it always. And for you to do that at 19 years old, that was quite some years ago. So we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all the information. And you went on a journey. And that is one of the topics. Two is I visited you, thanks to your generosity, about 3 years ago in Missouri. And I became schooled in what I now find is my most confident source of food, which is regenerative farming. I always thought organic, but you really educated me to the fact that there's a big step above organic, or not even above, it's different, called regenerative. And I want, secondly, for you to explain that. And lastly, I'm going to have to ask you about this new protein that your company came out with the A2 whey, because I'm using that, and I, in 46 years of using protein, don't think I've ever used one that was more agreeable and helped me in the gym more than this particular protein. So if you are good with this, how about telling people a little bit about that amazing story of recovery? And really that story is what led you into this industry that you've been involved in for decades, which is life-changing for many people, because you founded Garden of Life, and then you went on from there. And I've always seen you as the most transparent and ethical business owner as far as this industry. And nothing has ever been in your platform that you did not embrace with the highest quality standards, and that involves ancient nutrition today. So tell a little bit about that early 19-year-old journey that you started on.
Absolutely. This now is hard to believe. It was over 30 years ago. Think of mid-90s. And I grew up, Ed, really in this industry. So my dad is a chiropractor, naturopath. I, in the 70s and 80s, ate differently than everybody. I would say that I was ostracized by kids at school, my friends, because everything we had back then in our refrigerator and our pantry was quote unquote yucky. And Ed, I don't think I remember how long you've been in the industry, but if you remember sort of carob Santa Clauses and the three types of sorbitol-based candies that we had and all the dense flours, my mom would send me to birthday parties and she would bake me a cake. And I don't know what it was, but maybe they didn't want to use baking powder or baking soda, but they were literally the height of pancakes. And I would have these sorby or plum candies with a J on them. And I always joke and say that candies are guaranteed to melt in your mouth within 6 months or your money back. I had a fakin' bacon. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I do. Like yes.
The tofu-based bacon. And so I'd open my lunch and let's just say no one was trading anything with me. So I grew up in and around natural health, but it wasn't until I became devastatingly sick at age 18, a diagnosis that would ultimately come as Crohn's colitis. But because of that great breakdown in my digestion and immune system, I went on to experience multiple other health challenges, from diabetes to major heart health issues. So I had some heart infections. I had prostatitis. I had urinary tract infections. I had kidney issues. The list goes on. And I ultimately went down to 104 pounds in a wheelchair, and I'm just over 6 feet tall. And my normal weight, like right now, for example, I'm 195. So if you think about losing almost half your weight, and I was devastated. My dad did not believe in conventional medicine as a first line of treatment, but ultimately, after natural methods didn't work, I was forced to go into the hospital multiple times. I was on dangerous medications for 18 months. Nothing helped. I traveled the world, visited 70 medical experts, and it wasn't until I met a man just about 2 years into the disease that said he could help me if I ate a diet based on the Bible, proven through history and confirmed by science. I was introduced to things like raw dairy, grass-fed beef, pasture-raised eggs, sourdough breads, like all the things that are now becoming trendy. I started to consume, and my life was really transformed. And I added a probiotic that we now would refer to as SBOs, or soil-based organisms, combined with organic minerals that you find in the soil. So think about what we're missing today is microbes and minerals in our soil. So I got that. I'd already tried 30 different probiotic brands, and some I would consume bottles a day. Nothing worked. And obviously with a gut disease, you should think a probiotic would work. So this was really amazing. I turned 21. I regained my health, and I began on a journey to tell the world how to transform their health. And ironically, Ed, I worked at a health food store right after getting well called Nutrition World. I'm sure you're familiar, the one in South Florida. I stocked shelves, was paid $4.25 an hour, wasn't real passionate about that, but I had this before picture that I asked my mom to take, and thank God I did, because I have a photograph that shows me at 111 pounds, deathly ill. It couldn't be digitally retouched because it was taken on a good old-fashioned camera with a negative and everything, which is almost weird for me to say. And I went on to start telling people that there is hope, and they could change the way they eat, and they could take supplements and skincare products that were free of chemicals and avoid certain toxic foods and environmental toxins. And I began to share that message one life at a time. I started a company in the spring of 98 out of my parents' friend's garage. That company is now Garden of Life. And then I went on to start a company called Beyond Organic, which is a regenerative organic farm, and we had foods and beverages. And then I started in 2016 in the spring, Ancient Nutrition, which we'll talk about a little bit today with Dr. Josh Axe, a protege at the time and now a partner of mine. And we have been very avid, I would say, staunch supporters of the regenerative agriculture movement. In 2022, we began what will be a 14-year research project on 4,000 acres, which we're going to hopefully prove that regenerative organic agriculture can transform our soil, our food nutrient density to levels that we haven't seen in this century, let's just say that, or even last century. So we combine our passion to heal people and planet very nicely. My personal mission statement is to heal the planet, feed the world, and eradicate disease. Now, obviously, that sounds like a pretty lofty set of goals, but you know what, Ed? For the first time in a long time, I'm very hopeful that the United States and the world is ready for this. I'm sure a lot of people share my enthusiasm. And in fact, if you would have told me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, that today, as we stream this, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is being, I'll say attacked by the Senate, but being questioned, and that someone who actually believes in freedom to consume food like raw milk, believes in access to stem cells and peptides, believes in the supplement space, could be the Secretary of Human Health Services, I would have been shocked. Because I know, Ed, we've been in this industry a long time, and we've always heard of Codex Alimentarius and all the things that are going to attack our industry, and senators that want to undo our dietary supplements, health and education act. But today I'm very optimistic that we're going to start seeing subsidies given to regenerative agriculture, to organic foods and beyond. And it's just a great time to be doing what we do. And I haven't wasted my illness and my recovery. I feel like I've been able to share this message of health and hope with others. most people don't even know this part, but in 2008, I was diagnosed with cancer and told it was incurable. And I overcame that through God's grace and some of these powerful principles. I'll introduce more about that in a book that's coming out this fall. But I really believe that anyone who's listening or watching can experience healing if they will change their behavior and start to have a little hope. And that's why we do what we do.
Love your story. And I'm so aligned with you. One is the medical traditional model is pretty poor at giving hope. And if they do, sometimes it's kind of false hope. And it also has a place. There's no doubt. I don't want to be without the traditional medical model of many cases. I mean, when I came to visit you in Missouri, I was walking on a cane and struggling greatly. How did I end up doing with that? I had to have double hip replacement. That is the magic of good traditional models of medicine. But for chronic diseases and illnesses, you know what would have happened to you at 19. You probably wouldn't have made it to 29, one. And two is if you would have had the life taken out of you as far as any vital life energy, because you'd been on so many meds that just took the immune system away so it wouldn't attack the colon. Well, that's treating a symptom. That's not treating the real cause. And you knew that there was a magical healing power within all of us that if we can access it through the use of wisdom and common sense and Mother Nature and just practices that were built into us to allow healing, but it takes a plan. And you created a plan, and you also planted seeds, as I think I have over my almost 46 years of being in this industry, that is sprouting right now. And you're so right. Regardless of what happens with the hearings, I don't think we'll ever go back to quite the old days of the harsh arrogance and non-acceptance of nuts like you and I, because we have so much more science behind us now. One, we have more people who have tipped the scale, and COVID helped us in many ways to open the minds and eyes of many people who were more staunch, just simply educated out of textbooks. Well, now they see that there's a whole lot more to health than just following a plan from the pharmaceutical world. And that, we need those things occasionally, but overall, they're not going to probably heal you much. They're just going to treat symptoms. So my trip to Missouri out there, I loved being with you. You were inspirational, extremely vital health energy. You exuded it every single day. And I just appreciate what you've done for this country because of your planting of seeds through a lot of hard work. And it doesn't come easy. It certainly doesn't. So lovely story. I want to say that when I came to your place in Missouri, I didn't have a clue what it meant to as a farmer to be a regenerative farmer. I thought it was kind of a cousin to organic. I came back full of excitement about this new being really kind of like the old school a long time ago, but new in our world today of how do we take care of the soil, and the way that you treated those animals was so humane, and the rotation of crops and you had me plant some plants out there despite I was hobbling around on my hips. And it was just magical. And I will never forget that time of learning about the earth and the harmony. You actually created harmony. That's what you did in my mind of everything from the bees to the cows to the plants to the soil to the grass to the bugs. You wanted an orchestra that was harmoniously playing music. That was, I think, the goal. But you explained exactly what is regenerative farming in a quick summary, and why, and what differences is that from organic.
Absolutely. Well, first, I'll say this. The term regenerative or regenerate is powerful because it quite literally means bringing something that's dead back to life. Regenesis, coming back in a way that it was initially intended. And I think regenerating, taking steps to improve, whether it's our physical health or the health of our soils, is so critical. I would like to say that the simplest definition of regenerative is to improve our agricultural ecosystem so that the old adage takes place. We're leaving the land better than when we found it. So I believe the only way to truly practice regenerative farming or regenerative agriculture is to monitor the health of your ecosystem and show improvements year over year, not just what your behavior is, not just your practices, but are there more microbes in your soil in terms of volume? Is there more microbial diversity? Do you have more soil organic matter, which is the source of minerals that ultimately becomes our plants? By the way, people don't necessarily know this. Soil doesn't have vitamins. Soil has minerals. The minerals are only made bioavailable to plants by microbes or bacteria, yeast, fungi, etc. And the plants, through photosynthesis, create antioxidant compounds. They create vitamins, polyphenols, and then hopefully there's animals that are eating them. They're being raised healthfully. So no matter what you're consuming, plants or animals, it all comes from the soil, interaction with the sun. Of course, the precipitation or rain is critical. Water is so critical. So regenerative should mean being better every month, every year, rebuilding, so to speak. And I will say this, this is kind of a slippery slope. Regenerative is now getting to be exciting. It's gaining traction. And I want to be clear, regenerative isn't always better than organic. Regenerative can be an alternative to organic, but I would prefer, and the way that we farm, is that you have an ecosystem that is regenerative and organic. So what we do, Ed, on our farms in Tennessee and Missouri, we are certified organic. So we have that foundation, which means we have certain practices. We avoid the use of various chemicals, whether it's fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. We don't use vaccines or medicines with our livestock. That would include our turkeys, chickens, ducks, our goats, sheep, cattle, and water buffalo. Our dogs that are guardians, we don't use those things. And because we combine that with regenerative, we are making improvements consistently every year. In fact, and I'm very proud of this, our farms are research hubs for the Savory Institute. The Savory Institute is the leading ranch management or grazing movement in the world. We are certified organic, and we are also one of 5 regenerative organic learning centers, which means we are tasked with helping farmers in our area become regenerative. So we went very far with this because it was important for us to not just talk a good game, but be objectively regenerative. We also are a research site for the Rodale Institute. And if you haven't heard of them, they coined the term organic, created the standards, and then now we're one of 3 organizations behind the Regenerative Organic Alliance creating those standards. In fact, we have scientists on site. We take tens of thousands of measurements every year. So we're really, really proud of what we do. We have an open door policy. We do have all kinds of farm days where we bring local schools, local farmers, we bring governmental officials, we bring retail partners like yourself, Ed, and others. You were in a group of about 30. And we are just completing year 3 of our program. So we started officially in April of 2022. So we will finish year 3 in a couple of months. And we're just so excited about what we're learning and then what we're able to share. But I will say this, if you want to ensure the healthiest foods possible, the best of the best is Regenerative Organic Certified. I will also say, Ed, in fairness, the biodynamic movement, which never really took off the way that I would have hoped or others, that's another great standard, but it's very hard to find foods that comply. But if you buy something that's Regenerative Organic Certified, we call it ROC for short, you're doing something great. If you find something regenerative that's not organic, that's likely still very good. And organic is still good. I don't want to denigrate any of those, but the gold standard, in my opinion, is Regenerative Organic Certified. Ancient Nutrition has pioneered supplements with those standards, and there are many great food brands and beverage brands and now skincare brands that are doing this. And if you want more info, regenerativeorganic.org, I believe. It might be regenerativeorganic.com. Maybe you could post that, somebody, and if they're listening later. But that's a great way to understand the standards. And I love their saying, and That's what's on our t-shirts that we had made, Ed. Farm like the world depends on it. And that's the best way to describe it. How would I describe regenerative in one sentence? Farm like the world depends on it, because it does.
Wow, what a wonderful explanation, and an amazing legacy that you will leave by the seeds you have planted with the education. I'll always remember the education you gave when, and I don't know the specifics, but you were talking about planting corn, and or whoever was teaching us, and it was about, okay, conventional corn is planted in these deep rows that are, planted in the way that you see everywhere planted, and that's not is not healthy for the soil due to multiple reasons. So every time I see off the interstate all these massive cornfields all planted in those perfectly straight rows, I always think about what you did. And, you played a movie out there on the big bus as we were driving, The Biggest Little Farm. Anyone interested in really seeing a lot of what I thought was similar between your process of how you put that farm together? The Biggest Little Farm was a great couple who bought this property that was barren, and within about 3 to 4 years, they were producing a large amount of food that seemingly was very regenerative. So I'm glad you explained about the certification, because that is going to be growing, and people want to be informed about, okay, how do I choose the best foods? And yes, we do know that organic is still excellent, but the best combination would be the two. And thank you for that. I look forward to, you and I did a podcast actually about 2 years ago on just your farm, on regenerative farming for Nutrition World. And so I'm glad that we can educate people more about that, because that word needs to be more commonly used in the community. I want to switch gears here if we can, Jordan. I work out every day. One of my addictions is the gym. Always has been. It's not the worst addiction you can have. It's certainly better than alcohol and other drugs. But I always believe in, and as I get older, the science is proving it, that we need very adequate levels of protein to age gracefully, to maintain muscle, because the lack of muscle and the weakening of the muscular structure is correlated with mortality, more connected to mortality than almost any other number that we have. You talk about smoking even does not equal the amount of decrease of lifespan when you are weak, because weakness is what takes us out at the end. And we got to reserve that and build reserves as we age. Well, one of those is, of course, activity and exercise. But even with that, if you don't do enough protein, it's not going to really be there for your cognitive function and your physical function. So I've always used protein. Well, I started using a little more about 3 years ago, where I was trying to achieve 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is, I think, for myself and many people, is the ultimate adequate number. Not everybody would agree, but that has worked for me. It doesn't hurt kidneys if you're doing it right, all these other things. And protein's always agreed with me, but I can tell you, and this is not a sales line, we didn't come on here to do this. Your new protein, which your rep Chad gave me a bottle, and I was skeptical, like, okay, another protein, but it's made differently than any other whey protein that I've ever seen. It's made from what we call A2 milk products, and you can explain what that is. Never have I had a protein, one, that tasted better. It has no stevia, it has Lohan in it, so it's no aftertaste. But my digestion, I never had problems with the other, but this one is absolutely the best I've ever had, and I do believe that it's converting to muscle easier than the other ones. So I actually brought my container of it here. It's the Ancient Nutrition Whey Protein Vanilla. Tell people why this A2 protein's different.
And first of all, I think it's great for those of us who have been excited about exercise and strength to have that so tied now with longevity and wellness, because I think for a period of time, there was this idea that weightlifters and bodybuilders were not as healthy and that you needed to practice things like yoga or Pilates, etc. And by the way, I think doing anything physical is amazing, but there is so much emphasis now on strength training for men and women, old and young. I also love the idea that people are now saying that 1 gram of protein per either pound of body weight or pound of ideal body weight is being discussed as a benefit and pro longevity. Because Ed, you and I have been in this industry a long time, and people have often said that protein and meat are bad. they create toxins, they clog your colon. You need to eat less, lower calories. Plant-based makes you live longer. And I do think that that is faulty information. Even what we've heard, the spin on the Blue Zones documentary and some of the other information, where I think the world's healthiest people do eat at least some animal products. They do have a lot of physical activity and community. So all of that together. But what you asked me earlier about protein is also interesting, and it can be controversial because I've been brought up to believe, and this is what the anti-milkers will say, milk is good for baby calves, not for adults. But I will tell you, Ed, my recovery from Crohn's disease and my read of history, particularly through the Bible, was that anyone who had access to dairy, and when I say anyone, I mean any human or animal, because we see cats and dogs around the farm, they're drinking milk anytime it spills. Any human that has access to healthy dairy that's raising animals consumes it. And it is really, really something that I'm passionate about. And so I have never believed, since I became an adult, and especially with what dairy has done for me, that dairy is either good or bad inherently. What I believe is there are great forms of dairy, which we'll talk about in a moment, and there are unhealthy forms. Unhealthy would be pasteurized, homogenized, coming from cows that weren't grass-fed. They were given hormones. They were not raised healthily, propped up by medications, and then it was enriched with vitamin D, skimmed, put in plastic. All of those things, to me, make dairy, frankly, very unhealthy. But over the course of time, starting really in the mid-2000s, I learned why certain dairy products are healthier than others. Now, if you look at my earlier books, Patient Heal Thyself, Maker's Diet, that I wrote in the early 2000s, I talked about those who are sensitive to dairy to consume goat or sheep milk dairy. And I didn't know why, other than they were seemingly more digestible. But in 2006, I learned about a protein in milk called A1 beta casein. And it has been called by scientist Keith Woodford, who wrote a book by this title, The Devil in the Milk. And there was a protein in 99% of U.S. cow's milk, A1 beta casein, that he believed was more harmful than gluten for the gut, disrupting the gut-brain axis, having opioid-like effects, causing digestive issues, blood sugar issues, neurological issues, immunological issues, and the list goes on and on. So starting at that point, Ed, I had a vision to create products made from A1 free dairy that is called A2. But let me be clear here. I also learned that sheep, goats, water buffalo, and most importantly, humans only produce A2 beta casein in their milk, which means A2 casein is natural to humans. But as soon as you consume cow's milk from I call them the Chick-fil-A cows, Holstein, black and white cows that are predominant in America, that inflammatory protein comes into your life for the very first time. So could it be that dairy's amazing? We've just been consuming the wrong kind. So all that to say, Ed, I have created herds of cattle and buffalo and sheep that are A1 free. We even launched some dairy products years ago that were A1 free. But now what you're referring to is Ancient Nutrition's grass-fed whey protein with A2 dairy. And my friends of 15 years who helped me when I was beginning to farm, they have a farm in Northern California. I've been there. I know it well. And they produce the first A2 milk protein that we include in our Ancient Nutrition whey protein. And you mentioned it's sweetened only with monk fruit. Lots of protein. And Ed, what you and I know, and some people listening know, is that leucine is a branched chain amino acid that is critical for catalyzing muscle protein synthesis. That's a fancy way of saying it puts you in a state where you can build muscle instead of tearing down, because the body builds and it tears down. And when you work out, your body starts to tear down some of the tissue. When you consume a protein source with over 2 grams of leucine, research has shown that it puts you in a positive protein balance or a muscle building state. So by consuming 1 serving of Ancient Nutrition grass-fed whey protein with A2 milk, you can be in that positive nitrogen balance. It is digestible for you. It also has a great source of collagen in our eggshell membrane collagen. Tastes amazing, and it is wonderful in a smoothie. You can bake with it. You can put it in yogurt, cottage cheese. In fact, Ed, if you take a cup of cottage cheese, which is 26 grams of protein, and you add a scoop of Ancient Nutrition's protein, it'll make it sweet and delicious. And on top of that, you'll get nearly 50 grams of protein. And if you're someone like you and I would need 180 grams or to 200 grams of protein a day. Not sure how much your target weight is, but getting 50 grams is pretty important. And I'm going to be eating here soon this afternoon, and I'm going to be having a meal that's somewhere between 35 and 50 grams of protein, but it's difficult to physically consume from food 190 to 200 grams of protein, which is why protein powders can be so critical. And it's why I make smoothies for all of my children who are now getting older. I have teenagers and 20-somethings still in the house, and I make protein smoothies for them every single morning with either our whey protein or our bone broth protein, depending on their needs. And I know I'm starting them off with 30 to 50 grams of protein at their first meal or snack. And I've got a son, Ed, who plays college football, and he's consuming 300 grams of protein a day. Yeah. And I can tell you, as much meat and eggs as he eats, we couldn't get there without protein powder.
Wonderful explanation. And I learned something from that I had not known about the protein. And you are so right. One of my, we have so much platform of information through Instagram, which is Nutrition World Chattanooga, and Facebook and YouTube. And we're getting about 220,000 views per week. That's how people are learning and wanting to learn information. But I keep saying something as far as advising people. First off, I actually did not hit single-digit body fat until I was past 60. And because I have done what I call changed my macros, and what I meant by that was every day I'm consuming about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I'm consuming healthy fats, good quality olive oil, avocados, organic butter, all of those, some omega-3s. And then I use lower carbs Monday through Saturday, and Sunday I eat higher carbs. You are so right, though. When I tried to do 180 grams, which I weigh 181 this morning, you can't do it with food, almost. And so I do 50 grams, which is 2 of your scoops in the morning with cold water. I get up at 3 o'clock every day. I'm doing that at 3:15. And then I'll have a piece of organic cheese about 7 to get me to lunch because I'm at the gym. It's physically impossible to do it without protein. What happened when I started doing that was miraculous. One is my carbohydrate cravings plummeted. I hardly ever need to eat a carbohydrate or crave one. And secondly one is your belly gets full of protein. You don't have as much room to hold other foods. Secondly is blood sugar stayed completely balanced. On this kind of diet, I don't do this anymore. I do this, which is pretty steady. Very important for aging, because the steadier our blood sugar, the steadier our aging will be. And when you're every morning you wake up and you say, what can I eat today, is not going to be a good plan. It's so much more efficient to have a steady intake in the morning. Supper, I want to have a really good supper. I want to be able to choose from a menu the healthiest foods and have something different tonight that I had the previous night. Protein, you're just putting gas in the engine. Let's put the protein in there like this and make the body perform the way that it did a couple decades ago, which is what's happened. But again, and I never do these things just to actually promote a product. Best protein I've ever used in 46 years, Jordan. And I love the cinnamon one for if people want weight loss. You have a cinnamon one that has some components that help that. And I actually had forgot it has the eggshell membrane. Eggshell membrane is amazing for our joint health and so much. And very few companies use that. It's extremely pure ingredients. So kudos to you for coming out with something that blew me away, which is most of the time it's copycat stuff that other companies come out with. This was innovative. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And what you referred to as the fat loss formula, Ed, we found some research out of an Italian university that showed an ashwagandha root extract combined with cinnamon helps to promote healthy body composition and stimulate fat loss. And it does it in a way that has all these side benefits like stress relief, better sleep, thyroid health, and of course with cinnamon, blood sugar. And that's a great formula you could even put in your coffee instead of a creamer. So imagine consuming coffee in the morning, 8 to 12 ounces. And by the way, I'm not a coffee drinker, but caffeine is the number one ergogenic aid that's ever been studied, meaning the number one performance aid. And if you're consuming coffee and then you can add 23 grams of protein, clinically studied ashwagandha cinnamon combo, and that is the sweetener as well, getting 23 grams of protein in your coffee is going to get you off to an amazing start for your day.
Wow. Lastly, so we can finish up, I remember when I was in Missouri with you, I had just really started kind of deep diving into this soil-based organism, even though early on with the Garden of Life product, I was conflicted about whether this was something that I wanted to take on or not take on, because at that point, we didn't have quite the science that we have now. And I admitted it. I am always, and I hope I never changed, can admit when I was wrong. I was wrong about soil-based organisms. And this was in the 80s and 90s, I know. So now I'm humongously a fan of it. I'm not saying it's the only thing to recommend. I always recommend it for people who are on antibiotics because it's one of the most stable ones that actually helps you still, where most probiotics are killed by the antibiotics. But tell people a little bit about what is a soil-based organism and why would they want to perhaps consider this for their health?
And I had a very big smile on my face because when we started in the 90s talking about soil-based organisms, the entire probiotic industry was against us. And I'm sure you got caught up in that. These brands that have been around for a very long time basically said that our products would kill people. And look, here's what I can tell you. I used all of those competitor probiotics when I was a teenager to try to get well, and it didn't work. But when I read this little typewritten page that said a combination of probiotics found in the soil and the minerals that feeds them and then feeds your body, it just made sense to me and it transformed my life. And I've been consuming soil-based organisms now for 30 years. When I travel overseas, I double up before, after, during. Simply put, soil-based organisms, which could come in the form of a bacteria or a yeast, they are hardy. They can't really be destroyed by heat or stomach acid. They create compounds that disrupt bad germs. They can be used with antibiotics, and they stimulate gut immunity, digestion, elimination. They kind of eat the undigested crud in your gut like Pac-Man would. And you probably remember that, Ed, when we first came out with our information in the late 90s, we talked about this idea that soil-based organisms can clean your body from the inside out. We're not exposing ourselves to the environment as much anymore. They educate your immune system. So I even remember, and you would, if we mentioned name, you'd get this, but one of the leading scientists on probiotics in the 80s and 90s said about SBOs, I will never sell SBOs, or I'll sell SBOs over my dead body. Yes. And, this isn't funny, although he did live a long life. When he died, his company began selling soil-based organisms. So now we see them in kombucha. We see them in frozen yogurt because they're stable, because they work. And Ancient Nutrition created a line of SBO probiotics that are great for someone with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, with occasional constipation, gas, bloating, indigestion. If you can't digest dairy or gluten, if you want foundational immune system support, this is something our ancestors consumed every day in their food. When you consume triple washed spinach, you don't get soil-based organisms anymore. So I think, Ed, no nutritional regimen is complete without consuming soil-based organisms. And something you'll love, and you know this, soil-based organisms, unlike other probiotics, create proteolytic enzymes that help you break down protein and utilize it better, and fats, by the way. So we've been doing work on this for 28 years, and I believe in the future, more and more probiotics that could be considered soil-based organisms are going to be even more popular because I believe they're the most effective. Now, you'll see at Ancient Nutrition, we combine them with some lactobacillus and bifidobacteria because they work synergistically. But if you've tried probiotics and they've failed, or if you need an even further boost, Ancient Nutrition's SBO probiotics are fabulous. I use them every day. My favorite, Ed, is SBO Probiotics Trinity. It has prebiotics, probiotics, parabiotics, and postbiotics, which is probably for another program, but it really is awesome.
Love that. And I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, I remember someone out there on your farm telling me that when your cattle get sick, that sometimes you actually give SBOs to the cattle at relatively high dosing. And because here's the thing, and what you said was resonates so much with me. If you think about the fact that we're only on this earth, that one of the biggest reasons is the soil. Everything that we were maintained our life by came from the soil. And when you think of the dark, rich topsoils and the minerals that are in there, and then you talk about the bacteria is something that people didn't really think about, but it is vital to the soil, which means it's vital to us. If it's vital to the animals that have been on this earth for millions of years, it has to have a place within our platform of maintaining and improving health. Which ones are they? Well, no one would know. You don't want to go eat dirt, but you have innovated that to a point of, oh, we know which ones are probably the most. I think it's an evolving science. I think we're going to, in 10 years, certainly know more than we know now. But I love recommending the SBOs by you. I know that I'm a big proponent of educating people on oxalates, and I think Chad, your rep, educated me. One of your probiotics, which is what I take, the one daily, has actually one of the type of microbiome organisms actually helps us to detox oxalates. So I've done a bunch of podcasts with Sally Norton, and I just think that's one reason I think I had double hip replacement. This is because I ate so much spinach and raspberries and almonds, and I did this for 45 years, and all my other joints are like a 35-year-old, but for some reason I completely destroyed both joints, and I wasn't doing heavy squats, I wasn't doing marathons, and so I'm on this journey, a passionate journey to educate people about the harmful effects, the toxic effects of some of the superfoods. And I don't take much vitamin C anymore, I don't take turmeric, but generally my supplement plan still involves most of the other things, but I can educate people on what to do with that. But I love your probiotic that has to do with helping to eliminate more of those oxalates. Amazing information today, Jordan. Is there anything you want to leave people with in regard to other pieces of this information?
I just think we're in an exciting time. Ed, actually, as we were talking, a good friend of mine who's an industry leader texted me from the RFK Jr. hearing where he's present. And I just think that what we have been pioneering, in some cases taking bullets and bleeding for, which is the freedom to access food that we choose, whether it's raw dairy, farm fresh eggs, if we want to eat our meat raw or cooked, we can decide. Access to organic, regenerative, and beyond, and understanding that compounds that are chemicals like fluoride in our water and all these food dyes and fragrances and the 1,000+ chemicals that the FDA allows, but Europe and other nations have banned. We're finally going to see, I think, what we, a little niche group of people were believing 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is now going to become commonplace. And I'm looking forward to seeing the bell curve change and seeing the autism diagnoses and the obesity. And to your point on hip replacement, and just the idea that everyone should be drinking spinach and kale smoothies without really understanding the biochemistry behind it. I'm looking forward to that truth coming out, more research, etc. But the best thing you can do right now is Consume foods that are organic, or better yet, regenerative organic certified. Local is great. Support brands that do, and then support information like this podcast that has been educating you for so many years. And despite what we've been called, or what kind of names, or what kind of conspiracy, whatever, if you would have listened to this information 10, 20, 30 years ago, you would have been better off. So guess what? Don't lament what you didn't do. Start today. People say, Jordan, is there ever a good time to start this program? Today. Is there ever a bad time? Don't wait. Yesterday is even better. So very excited about that. And thanks for having me, Ed. Look forward to seeing you on either the Missouri or Tennessee farm in the near future. And excited about increasing health as we age.
Well, you are a hero and you're a pioneer. I feel I'm a pioneer also because, again, like you speak about, we've had some naughty stuff thrown at us in regard to public opinion. Sometimes the medical community has been pretty dang awful to us at many times. And, you know, we got a leg to stand on now. And I'm more optimistic than I ever have been. One of the greatest things I think about is the fact that I've lived long enough to see this shift. We'll never shift back to where we were. I don't know where it's going, but it is in a positive fashion. And I want to applaud you and all you and your company and the fact that you've been successful. Success is so wonderful because that allows you to have the financial strength to actually do this innovation and to talk and to educate and to build. You know, it's again, that old saying, you know, I mean, you don't get a job from a poor person. Well, you don't get innovation from people who haven't been good entrepreneurs and committed. There's nothing wrong with all of that. So kudos to you, Jordan. And yes, I am going to send 2 or 3 of my or more of my staff members to the Tennessee farm so they can learn, as I did, about regenerative farming and the fact that how much quality ancient nutrition partners with that whole philosophy of soil, farming, foods, and supplements. You can't separate supplements away from food. So they have to be blended somewhere, and you blend them better than anyone. So thank you, Jordan, for your time today.
Thanks, Ed, for having me, and continued good health. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.